The Zoom screen shows your client's face. They're talking, words are coming out, and you're nodding. You're hearing them. But are you actually listening? There's a difference, and that difference is everything. This is where we begin Module 5, the competency that sits underneath everything else you'll do as a coach. If you don't get this one right, nothing else works. So here's the thing. Most of us think we're good listeners. We've been doing it our whole lives, right? But what we've been doing is hearing, and hearing is passive. Sound comes in, we register it, we respond. Coaching level listening is something entirely different. It's a discipline. It requires intention, focus, and practice. Think about the difference between a manager listening to a status report, they're scanning for information they can act on, versus a coach listening to that same person. The coach isn't listening for data. They're listening for what the person needs to hear in themselves. That shift changes everything about how you show up. Let's look at how ICF defines this competency. They say it's about focusing on what the client is and is not saying to fully understand what's being communicated in the context of the client systems and to support client self-expression. There's a lot packed into that definition. Notice it says what the client is and is not saying. You're listening for both. You're paying attention to what's spoken and what's conspicuously absent. And the purpose, this is critical, isn't so you can understand. It's to support their self-expression. You're not gathering information to solve their problem. You're creating space for them to hear themselves more clearly. So what are you actually listening for? Picture an iceberg. The words "what's explicitly stated," that's just the tip. That's the surface level. Below that, there's context and emotion, the circumstances they're speaking from, the feelings driving their words, the energy behind what they're saying, and deeper still, the patterns and the silence, what's not being said, the gaps, the hesitations, the words they chose and the ones they avoided. Here's an example. Your client says, "I'm fine," but their voice drops, their eyes shift. The words say one thing. Everything else says something different. A coach who's truly listening catches that, and that's where the real conversation begins. Here's where I see coaches get tripped up. They listen to understand so they can respond with the perfect insight, the brilliant question, the solution. But that's not why we listen in coaching. Your listening serves a singular purpose: to support your client's self-expression and self-understanding. You're not listening so you can respond with something clever. You're listening so they can hear themselves more clearly. Think of yourself as a mirror, not a problem solver. When you make that shift, when you stop listening for what you can do and start listening for what they need to discover, everything about how you hold space changes. Let me name a few traps that pull coaches out of true listening. The first one, and this is the most common, is listening to formulate your next question. Your client is talking and half your brain is already crafting your response. You're not present to their experience because you're preparing your performance. The second trap is listening to find problems to solve. You're not a consultant diagnosing issues. Resist the urge to jump into fix-it mode and stay curious instead. And the third, listening selectively for what confirms your hypothesis. You've already decided what's going on, and now you're only hearing the evidence that supports your theory. Stay open to being surprised. That's where the real discoveries happen. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Active listening is the foundation of everything that follows in your coaching. You cannot evoke awareness if you're not truly hearing. You cannot facilitate growth if you're missing half the message. You cannot maintain presence if your attention is scattered. This competency isn't just one skill among many. It's the bedrock that all other competencies rest on. And one of the most important aspects of this kind of listening, understanding the world your client is speaking from, their context, their systems, the invisible forces shaping their words. That's where we're headed next, listening within context.